All right, and now for something completely different. The former National Intelligence Director is revealing a new government report on UFOs will be full of never before seen or heard intel.
Frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. We're talking about objects that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for.
Okay, joining us right now to discuss is Lou Elizondo. He is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a Pentagon unit that studies UFOs. Lou, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So part of the evidence apparently is going to show UFOs or some, they're just unidentified objects, breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom. How is that possible?
Well, I think that's probably the crux of the problem, that we are seeing these, let's call them vehicles, if you will, that are incurring into controlled U.S. airspace, that are displaying performance characteristics that are frankly well beyond anything that we can either replicate or in some cases really even understand.
So when you're talking about that, you're talking about how these things are able to do things that we have no idea how it's possible, given the speed and the altitude and things like that, and the turns and everything like that. I'm sure you've got the top physics experts in the world working on this. Can they come up with any explanation?
I think as we begin to look at this, we're beginning to realize that a lot of this really isn't breaking the laws of physics. What it's doing is really breaking our understanding of the current laws of physics that we are looking at. In essence, these things, if you look at quantum physics, there's a lot of modeling right now that suggests that a lot of this performance can be explained if you have a really deep understanding of quantum physics. And by the way, you're absolutely right. There's 5 unique observables that these things are displaying. One is instantaneous acceleration. The second one is hypersonic velocity. The third one is a bit of an oxymoron, but it's low observability. And then the fourth one is transmedium travel, the ability to operate in different environments. And then the last observable is this, if you will, this weird positive lift or anti-gravity, where you have these vehicles with no wings, no control surfaces, no engines, and yet somehow they're able to fly and frankly outperform some of the very best aircraft that we have in our inventory.
Unbelievable stuff. So Lou, when people say, oh, you're in that business, how do you explain these UFOs?
Sure. Well, my business has always been that as an investigator. I was an intelligence officer for the U.S. government, so my business was just to find the truth, whatever the truth is, whether it's a terrorism investigation or counter-espionage. Yeah, we applied the same methodologies we did investigating terrorist, if you will, operations and operatives as we did with this. And the information is very compelling. It's real.
Yeah. Okay, it's real. Are they from another planet?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. The 3 options that have been presented, that is our secret technology, but we've done a terrible job at coordinating the testing of this technology for decades with ourselves, which is highly unlikely. The second option is that it's foreign adversarial technology, which, if you were to ask me, would be a huge intelligence failure of this country, because we've been technologically leapfrogged. Or the third option is that it's something completely different. If it's not ours and it's not theirs, well, then it's someone or something else.
I can't wait for this report to come out. Lou, thank you very much for joining us today. Interesting stuff.
Sure, my pleasure.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. My gosh.
These 3 videos, released by the Department of Defense, have changed the way many people see what we can't explain.
The moment you mention UFO, immediately what comes to mind are little green men, tinfoil hats. That's not at all what we're dealing with.
In 2004, off the coast of California, an F-18 Super Hornet training exercise was suddenly interrupted by a call over the radio that would come to define Commander David Fravor's career.
There's certain things in your life where you just remember in vivid detail what happened. And that's one of them, because it's honestly the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying.
Fravor, the commanding officer of the Navy's Strike Fighter Squadron 41, and another F-18 scrambled to check out an unusual radar blip 80 miles off the coast.
So as we're looking around, the backseater in the other airplane comes up and says, "Hey, Skipper, do you see?" And before he says it, I'm like, "Dude, do you see that?" As soon as we look down, we see the whitewater, and then we see this little white tic tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right.
It's just bouncing around?
Yeah, like a ping pong ball.
What was its shape? What was its, what did it look like it was made out of?
Like a perfectly smooth white tic tac. Or for people that need a bigger visualization, a giant propane tank.
Fravor says the F-18s began circling, Fravor at 20,000 feet, and the so-called Tic Tac only about 50 feet above the surface of the water.
And I say, "Hey, I'm gonna go check this thing out." And the other pilot stays and says, "Hey, I'm gonna stay up high." And then it starts coming up at us. We call it two-circle fight, but it's coming up, I'm coming down. So it literally is aware we're there. There's no doubt because it mirrored me. So here it is. I cut across and I get to about half mile of it, so I'm about halfway across the circle. As it gets in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone. And it's gone like that fast.
What do you mean, poof, it's gone?
I mean exactly that. Like it's 1 minute it's there and the next second it's like magic trick. So I asked the other airplane, I said, "Hey, do you guys see that?" And they're like, "It's gone. It just disappeared."
When you saw this kind of performance, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
What the hell was that?
Once back on the carrier, Fravor's team told the next crew what had happened, and that crew took off ready to capture something on camera. And this is what they saw. I guess the biggest question is, what do you think it is?
I honestly don't know. I don't think that we have developed that technology. I don't think we developed it on this planet. We still, to this day, have no idea what it was, what we saw, what we chased, what we engaged. But it was pretty spectacular.
A report from that incident eventually made its way to the Pentagon and crossed the desk of Luis Elizondo, the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
In essence, what that program was an investigatory body looking at what we call the UAP, probably in the vernacular, it's better known as the UFO phenomenon. The bottom line here is that over the past several decades, we in the Department of Defense and the intelligence community have been noticing things in our airspace that don't have wings, they don't have cockpits, they don't have even an obvious sign of propulsion like an engine, and yet still they're able to defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity.
In 2020, the Pentagon declassified 3 videos, the Tic Tac video and 2 others filmed on the East Coast in January of 2015. Other countries have made similar public disclosures. Also in 2004, the Mexican Air Force confirmed this video was shot by one of their pilots near the coast of Baja California.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
In 2014, the helicopter from the Chilean Navy locked onto an unidentified object emitting what appeared to be some sort of gas or vapor. Both governments have said they investigated but couldn't determine what the objects were. To those like science writer Sarah Scholes, clipped black and white videos always leave a lot to the imagination.
To me, the most interesting thing about the videos is how little information is in them. All we have are these, 30 seconds or a minute of something totally decontextualized. And so everybody kind of gets to think whatever they want to think about them because we don't actually have enough information to form any kind of conclusion, which is UFO's favorite space to live in, the muddy, fuzzy space.
But will 2021 be the year all of that changes because of COVID-19?
Hidden among the many pages of the COVID-19 bill is this mandate to produce a report on unidentified aerial phenomena. What's different this time is that the military is kind of talking about them very explicitly in terms of threats. It's not like the Pentagon's deal to call things aliens, but that's kind of the angle they're coming from.
If there is a foreign adversary, let's say Russian or China or anybody else, who happens to have this technology and they've had it for decades, and we in the United States have somehow been strategically leapfrogged in our technology, we've got a big problem on our hands.
Officially, the clause attached to December's COVID-19 relief bill, added by the Senate Intelligence Committee, calls for the military and FBI to brief committee members on what they know about UAPs within 180 days of the bill's passing. The kind of top-level briefings Elizondo says he's given before.
The 3 options are, is it our technology? Is it foreign adversarial technology or someone else's technology? Or is it something completely different? We're 99% sure it's not foreign adversarial technology. So that only leaves really one other option. It's someone or something else.
Are these 3 videos the only videos that you know of that the United States government has that shows unidentified aerial phenomena?
No, absolutely not. These are probably some of the least compelling videos. In some cases, we've seen these things 50 feet away from the cockpit.
And when you're talking about something that is 50 feet away, I mean, what could they tell from being 50 feet away?
With all due respect, Gotti, I no longer work for the United States government in that capacity. So I want to be clear that I don't want to speak on behalf of the U.S. government. And I also want to give the government time to do what it needs to do regarding this data.
But in science, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
If the UFO field wants to be taken more seriously by scientists, I think they will kind of have to move away from the types of evidence that have historically been held up as adequate, like individual sightings, because the scientists can't really do anything with the story. They need data.
Look, I'm not a UFO guy. My background, I'm a former counterintelligence special agent. I was asked to do a job, which I did. However, it was my understanding and the conclusions that I came to, and by the way, every other person in the program unanimously came to the realization that these things are indeed real. And it's getting increasingly harder to keep the cat in the bag.
Do you ever think that you're going to see something like that again in your lifetime?
I don't know. I look up a lot. I mean, I'm not lying. On a clear night, you just look up and wonder. And I'll wander for the rest of my life. I think everyone does.
In night vision video from a Navy destroyer, a mysterious flying triangle above the deck of the ship. The Pentagon confirming the images obtained by documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell were taken by Navy personnel, expected to be a part of a report on unidentified aerial phenomenon to be presented to Congress this summer. Already online, some skeptics say the images are caused by cameras trying to focus, but some of the objects go beyond just flying in the sky. One shows a spherical object dipping into the ocean, similar to an incident in Puerto Rico where an object was tracked buzzing an airport, then flying into the water, popping back out before appearing to split into 2 and disappearing. Over the last several weeks, some of the nation's top former intelligence officials have been raising eyebrows.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Former CIA Director R. James Woolsey said he knew of a case where a plane was paused in midair.
A friend of mine was able to have his aircraft stop at 40,000 feet or so and not continue operating as a normal aircraft. What was going on?
In December, ex-CIA Director John Brennan said it was arrogant to believe there are no other forms of life other than the ones on Earth. And former intelligence chief John Ratcliffe says officials have been tracking technology beyond our capabilities.
We're talking about objects picked up by satellite imagery that are difficult to explain.
Like another incident off the coast of California in 2004 when a fighter squadron encountered an object that seemed to defy gravity.
What do you think it is?
I honestly don't know. I don't think that we have developed that technology. I don't think we developed it on this planet.
Video from that encounter and 2 other incidents were officially released by the Pentagon last year. Now new signs that the Pentagon could declassify more sightings of what they can't explain.
And guys, now here's the thing about those last 3 F-18 videos. I recently asked the former director of the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program at the Pentagon, point blank, are those the only videos that the government has? He said no, those were probably the least compelling videos. And in some videos, you see an object about 50 feet away from the cockpit. Guys.